Okay, thank you everyone, for stopping by this evening. And is there any agenda additions or deletions? Yes,
I'd like to,
Danny Pinkowski for the record. Go ahead.
I'd like to get added to the agenda for the evening for safety issue and driveway.
If we do that, if the board agrees, then we'll put you on the highway.
Yep. Great, thank you.
Do you have any
I don't
problem?
have any problem with it.
Do you, Bob, have any?
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Is there any other additions for the agenda or deletions? Okay, hearing none, I would look for a motion for the approval of the July 22nd minutes.
So moved, subject to corrections or omissions?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any corrections or deletions?
I found one.
Okay,
If I'm reading it correctly. Last page is 9A, treasurer's report. Like a double sentence after 9,000 of the same thing. If you read that, doesn't make sense to me.
Oops.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I did,
Okay.
sorry about that.
so it would be recommended that we,
Delete the
Second.
half of that after 9,000.
yeah, the second one.
But came in at 9. Yeah.
Is there any other corrections?
I think there are a few things included under treasurer's report as well that were nothing to do with my office. Did that get changed?
Oh, hold on a second.
Maybe the Grange Hall issue,
Matt Jacobowski brought that up.
Yeah, that is.
Grange Hall.
Oh, okay.
Oh, probably there should have been a 10 in front of that,
Yeah, because,
because there's no 10 in front of
yeah,
it and there's an
it
11
goes from 9 to
afterwards.
11.
Yeah,
So if we did that, that would cure everything.
yeah.
You see that, Janet?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right, okay.
I got it.
10, equipment's modern, and then maybe let's see, cash morning equipment. Maybe a 10A after that on where cash started.
Actually, it could just be renumbered.
Yeah, make that 11 and then adjournment is 12.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, do that. That works.
anything else?
That's it, for me anyway.
Bob, anything?
Nothing else. no.
Okay. Thanks for catching that, Rick. We have our warrants right here, so if anybody wants to come up and, oh, I'm sorry,
Gonna
Marge.
approve them.
Again, I would caution the board to make those notes available on the website, because you've got July 8th up there, and the public is not seeing those minutes, and they are supposed to be posted within 7 days.
The open meeting law.
Yes, it has to be done. I mean, I go on because I want to know what was in last time's minutes. I don't get them, so, you know.
Janet, have you been working
I have,
with Gloria on that?
but I will talk to her tomorrow and we'll see where there might be. For all I know, she's not getting my emails that I send. I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
She's saying she doesn't get it, so.
She being Gloria? Oh, okay. So I wonder if you're having some email.
I don't know, Mike, because I absolutely sent them, so we'll get it sorted.
Bob, there's a couple in there that you could assign to. Thanks for bringing that up. We'll follow up on that tomorrow, Janet. I'll
Yeah.
stop in probably. And I was going to go down to old business.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't believe you carried through with the vote on the minutes, did you?
Oh, you're right. I got carried away when Marge raised her hand. All right, there's been a motion made for acceptance of the minutes as corrected. Is there any other corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It was unanimous with corrections. Last meeting, July 22nd, we went and approved, I wanted to bring this up now, we went and approved the marijuana ordinance that Art, you, and John had worked on and stuff. But the following day, or maybe 2 days, we noticed that that ordinance would only speak to dispensaries. So if I wanted to open up a pot shop, there's nothing covered in that, according to what we're hearing. So that's why it was never posted, that we approved. So what we're going to do is, on the 26th of this month, we're going to have, at 5 o'clock, our policy meeting, that's scheduled. And we will then discuss it there and look at that again. It's not legal because we never posted it, even though we did. So what we'll do is we'll look at it then, and then our regular meeting then starts at 6 o'clock, and we'll read an updated draft, and we'll see what the board wants to do at that time, okay? So I just want to make that.
So the board will decide that night,
Right.
probably.
Yes.
Will there be a draft of then the ordinance beforehand?
No. You can, because our meetings are back to back.
Yeah. Oh, I understand that.
All right, so you will then have, I think it's 44 days, correct me if I'm wrong, once it's, once we post it, the public has 44 days to put a petition in if they don't like the ordinance. And the petition has to be signed by 5% of the legal voters in the town of Clarendon. And then what happens is, then it goes up to a town vote when we vote, I think, in November.
Is there a problem? I mean, the legislature is not gonna do anything, but is there a problem to get a draft out and say maybe vote on it at your next meeting?
Oh,
Why?
because I don't want to do that.
Okay, so you just wanna shove it down the
You're just gonna
taxpayer's
give it down
throat?
That's
Look,
right.
It's an ordinance.
Yeah, but
The select board has the authority to create an ordinance. And the townspeople, once it's posted in all the areas in town that we would like to post, as well as on our website.
Yeah, this is the same approach you took with the town plan. You didn't give people a chance to look at it or spend a lot of time with it, or even vote on it.
I'm just going by,
It's just-
I'm going by what the law tells us we can do.
I know the law tells you can do, but why don't you
always
give
the
the
right thing?
voters a little
Pardon?
bit,
Is that always the right thing?
right, just because you can
Because
doesn't
you
mean
can,
you
doesn't mean you
have
have
to.
to.
We
Give us the
can,
time to look at it.
we can have that discussion at the ordinance workshop when all 5 members of the board are here. And if all 5 members, or a majority thereof, decide that we'll post it around town for 2 weeks till the next regular meeting, and then we'll consider that. But if the board wants to go ahead, because it has the authority to go ahead and, vote on that new draft that would be established.
I wish Robbie was here, because right in the webpage, he says he wants transparency in government. But this is like, we're gonna approve it at 5, we're gonna draft it at 5 o'clock and then approve it at 6.
Now, my question to you is, you can come back here at that ordinance meeting and bring up that same question. And and Robbie should be here. Right now, he's dealing with the fair. And so, What we're trying to do is establish an ordinance, but there are legalities that are already granted by the legislature that says we, the town select board, have the right to create an ordinance. You, the voters, have a right to say, we don't agree with that ordinance, let's put it on a ballot.
Yeah, but then you gotta go through steps, you gotta go through expenses, you gotta go through effort. Why don't you just get it drafted up and let the townspeople look at it, and then at your next meeting, vote on it? Well, I mean, what's the rush? Nothing's gonna happen between now and probably February, March, or April, or May, when the legislature adjourns, if anything happens.
All right, but then here's what happens. We're saying, okay, we're nice guys, we're gonna let the voters look at this before we do anything with it. This is what you're suggesting. And then, you know, what happens if we hear 2 or 3 voters say, well, we don't like it? You still have to go through the process. The select board, if you only hear from a couple voters, after we've done all this other research and everything else to establish this, then at that following meeting, we could still sit here and say, no, we're gonna create this ordinance, and then it goes back out to the public again. You know,
Bob and Richard, is that what you guys wanna do? Draft it up at 5 o'clock and then pass it at 6?
I would only say that we as Mike said, we do have the authority to do
Sure
it.
you do, I'm saying that.
But if you, the voters, want to petition it, then petition it. It doesn't cost anything to petition.
Really want marijuana sold in town?
No, I don't, but it's not, it could be this on one ordinance, and then something else on another ordinance that takes property rights away or whatever. And we're gonna prove it at hour 1, and then, or we're gonna draft it at hour 1 and approve it in hour 2. I mean, my
Can I
goodness.
just say something? This is not gonna take the rights of the people's recreational marijuana. You can grow up to, I think, 3 to 5 plants. It's not gonna take the medical marijuana away.
It's not that.
What it's gonna do is take the stores and
Dispensary.
the dispensaries that would have people come that we don't want in town.
Right.
And all, that's what it's going to do. It's gonna take away somebody that's high on marijuana that wants to break into some store and get it. Well, you can have your recreational marijuana, you can have your medical.
And that's not the issue.
Not the
The
point.
issue is the approach that you're taking of not giving just the taxpayers or the voters an opportunity to look at something.
Now
And
that,
give you some insight
The-
after it's drafted and
I'm
before
just,
you act on it.
I am one member. And you're asking the other members that are present here tonight
Yeah,
to do this. But, let me say this, as one member, the legislature, in its wisdom, has granted all parts of the departments in town certain privileges. It's not a privilege, a right. Let me rephrase that. And the select board has the authority not to create zoning. That all has to go through a process. But the select board does have a right to create an ordinance. And so the payback to that, or the reply from the public is, they have a right to put a petition in. Now, if you have 5%, if enough people sign a petition, that's, what is it, probably 125 people, right? That's better than us sitting here and only having 2 or 3 people sitting in this room saying that you shouldn't have this ordinance.
Well, they can still do it.
What's wrong with putting something on a ballot then, next voting time?
When do you stop doing
And,
that?
excuse me, and waiting to see what the voters say then, instead of, you know, maybe 10 people coming down here to a meeting, or 2 people coming down here to a meeting saying yes or no, or this is what we want, or this is what we don't want. Let the town vote, should the select board enforce an ordinance, or enact an ordinance saying yes or no.
Well, that would be the question
That would
if,
be the right thing to do, wouldn't it?
but that would be the question if,
Why bother, why put the burden on us you know, you sit up there and say, well, we've got the right to do this, so we're gonna, and if you wanna go out and get 120 signatures.
Because there were a certain amount of people that came in here and expressed the opinion that they were nervous that they were going to legalize the sale of marijuana in
So
the
you're
towns.
anti-business then too.
Pardon?
You're saying you want any business in town. Regardless, business is business, whatever you're selling, it doesn't matter.
Evidently, how old are you? May I?
52 years old,
How old?
52.
Okay, I'm a product of the 60s, Vietnam veteran. I saw what happens when people are having a good time. And so I am one member, and I'm speaking for what I believe is right. There's 4 other members on this board. If you can convince 4 other members, or a majority of the 5 members, not to go by what the state has set up for us to follow procedure to create ordinances, then go for it. That's,
Here again, let's look at it. I see how everybody else is. It doesn't matter. You're gonna do what you want because you're scared. You're scared of something that's different. And,
I'm not afraid. I have children, I have grandchildren, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Mike, there's no doubt in my mind that this would get voted down. I mean, people, I don't think in general want marijuana dispensaries in Clarendon, but it's just the process. I mean, do you want to involve people in the process, the voters in the process, or not? Apparently you don't want it.
They would be involved with the process.
Right, but the burden is placed on them. I mean, it's
Exactly.
enough. People are working full-time, and it's tough for somebody to go out and round up 125 signatures. I mean, it's gonna take time.
I don't know, do you guys, Bob, you want to speak to this at all?
Well, this is not something that we all of a sudden are gonna do at next meeting right out of the blue. We've been discussing this, as a matter of fact, this started, I believe, Mr. Peterson can tell us, back in January or February of this year. This discussion started. There's been a number of meetings where there's been discussions on this, Alf, and it came to the point where we feel that we're ready to go, and I'm willing to go with what the state will allow us to do, you know? If we get the petition with the signatures, then I've certainly got to change my mind and put it out to the people, that's for sure.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, but now you're gonna change the ordinance, and then you're gonna vote on it in the next hour.
What, yeah, well.
We're not voting on that
it's-
tonight.
It's not, no,
You're
that,
gonna do it next week, and you're gonna vote.
No,
you're gonna have a
two-
meeting at
2
5
weeks from
o'clock,
now.
And you're voting on it at 6.
but
Not
the,
necessarily.
That's what he just said.
the objection, we're not doing that tonight, that's 2 weeks from now.
Right.
Right, and so what, the conversation came up when we thought we had what we wanted in town as far as an ordinance is concerned. You can get a copy from Janet and look at what we technically voted to become an ordinance. But what happened was, it was brought to our attention that legally is only dispensaries. But if I want to come in here and say, I'm not a dispensary, I'm going to sell my product to everybody in town who wants it, that's a store. The whole purpose of creating this ordinance from the very beginning is when individuals came into town here and were afraid that this session, the brilliance up in Montpelier, was going to come up with us selling pot around the state. They didn't pass that. But it's on the agenda for, we're told from our representatives, that that's still on the agenda for next session. So this is a preemptive, this thing is driving me nuts.
So has this already been passed? You've already voted on it?
Yes, but it's not legal because we never posted it. You have to post
Right,
it.
but you voted on it and passed it as far as you're concerned, so now you're gonna change it. So does that mean 2 months down the road, you're gonna add something else to it and just keep changing it?
No, once it's posted, then you have to go through a whole, we just can't change it. That's why we didn't post it. It's not legal by statute unless it's posted. So yes, we voted on it last meeting. But then, like I said before, because a couple days later, we got information that, well, wait a minute, that's just, somebody, who, came into town and looked at it and said, well, this is just dispensary, medical stuff. According
Can I ask another question?
to the state's, description or whatever what?
What are these dispensaries? Does
It's
that
from-
mean that me as a person could walk into somebody who opens one down the street and buy pot?
No,
No.
because you have to have, a medical sign off from
So
a
it's
doctor.
So we're even banning medical
No.
stuff?
No, we're not banning
Not
it,
banning
we're just banning the sale of it in our town. You can go to Rutland if they have a dispensary there and buy if you have
You have to have
a
medical
certificate,
marijuana card.
yes, a certificate from
So
a
you
doctor,
can't just walk off the street and buy pot?
No,
not in a dispensary.
no.
But if they legalize,
So what's the fear?
because they're also talking not only dispensary, this is why it didn't go through, what I was told, why it didn't go through, as a law this year. There was too many people saying that, this dispensary thing is one issue, but I'm gonna open up a pot shop and sell all kinds of pipes and all this kind of stuff and possibly, sell a certain amount of marijuana.
So why are we against the medical part of it?
We're not.
We're not.
We're not.
No,
No.
You're banning dispensaries.
No,
You're saying-
yes, we're not banning.
no, we're not.
If you say, if a doctor says, because you're in such pain and stuff, you can take medical marijuana. We're not saying that you can't live in our town because you have to take medical marijuana. We're just saying that you have to go to a legally authorized dispensary,
But it can't be in Clarendon.
but it's not gonna be in Clarendon. Yes, Cindy?
I have the question, you just said that somebody in town came in and told you that there was an error in what you passed.
Yes, this person has,
Then why, okay, if that's the case, why are you so against letting the townspeople that are talking here at least look at it? Maybe they'll see something else that you've missed. That's my question.
Give
And
it
then-
at least 2 weeks. Give it till your next meeting.
I mean, if we
That's all
look at it,
I'm
maybe we've got something that could
as,
make a difference.
what we have made a decision right now, and I will take total blame, if, whatever you wanna call it, is the fact that what we had passed did not meet what we had intended it to meet.
But
so-
somebody in town told you that, so maybe
No,
one of us would know
right,
that.
somebody informed us of this
All right,
information.
so maybe,
Because that person didn't spend hours looking at different drafts, going to different towns, see what they had and everything else. They just took up what we thought was the best thing, and they said, the bottom line was, well, yeah, so if I wanna open up a pot shop and not call it a dispensary, I can do that legally. And so when we want, when we want to revisit this, the only thing we're going to consider at this time is to say dispensary or whatever we want to call it, marijuana store, or back in the day it was pot shop, but go ahead. Yes,
I'm hearing a couple different issues. And I think they're both important issues. On the one hand, the issue of whether or not it should be allowed to have a dispensary or a head shop, if you will, in the town of Clarendon. And the other issue has to do with the question that's been raised about the process that is being used to establish the ordinance. So, I guess I haven't weighed in on this in the past, but my thought on it, as I'm listening, is that, number one, it is, I would assume, probably the case that if there were a vote on a draft ordinance, the ordinance would probably be passed, which would be to ban both the shop and the dispensary. The question of process, it seems to me, is one of risk. What are the benefits and what are the risks of public discussion as part of the process of passing the ordinance? We live in a small community, we live in a small state, we live in a small community, we live in a place that allows access to our elected officials. And it's one of the hallmarks of the state of Vermont that you can talk to not just aldermen, but representatives and senators, et cetera, and the governor. So while I think it would be efficient for you to do it the way that you've been suggesting, and I think I understand.
By state law.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand the right. I was thinking about that and saying that having the right to do something doesn't necessarily mean that it's a requirement. I mean, you undoubtedly have the option to do whatever it is you would like to do, whether it is to do it simply by a vote of the board or getting input from the community and then voting on the board. I think one of the it's also clear to me that not everybody understands the proposed ordinance. And I think that having public involvement in the process would also serve an educative function. That is, that the draft could be described and discussed and take questions so that people are clear about what the ordinance is. And you still retain the authority to make the final decision about it. And the process of, the 5%, I'm not sure that that's 120 people. I don't recall exactly how many registered voters there are.
2,500.
Okay, well then you're right. So I think that what I would encourage is for you folks on the board, all 5 of you, before you make a final decision about which way you're going to go on it, have another discussion about it, because I don't think you're going to get a lot of flack, and I don't think there's going to be any significant disruption in the process or disadvantage to allowing some public involvement, a little time to consider it, and then you take the vote. So
Let me, while you're saying this, I appreciate, your comments, and I appreciate the fact that what you're, and same with Alf, or saying here, it does appear as though the select board, well, we had the power, so we're gonna do this kind of thing. However, over the years, I've been on the board a long time, 30 years this year. And I have seen over the years, and this is why some of the law has changed to where it is now, statewide, because there was enough select boards from the smaller communities going to their legislators and say, for instance, when we had issues with parking on the Gorge Road, we couldn't do that. What we had to do was we couldn't tell them they couldn't park there as long as they weren't on the road. Well, then we had this information about how to create an ordinance, but then we didn't have the power at that time to do that. So then when the law had changed, we then had the power to say, all right, we're gonna create an ordinance, no parking along the Gorge Road because X, Y, Z. And so that's just an example. So when that came into effect, we didn't have people saying, well, what do you mean? Even though people went fishing there, swimming there, and all these things, there was other things that went on over there. That's why I think you when you were constable. Yes, Marge?
Well, as I'm listening to this could open up where the public wants to get in on all your ordinances, and you've got how many of them? And the proper process that the state says is the select board sets the ordinance, the townspeople don't like it, you have the right to petition. And that's that is the process.
And that's why, and
If you set a precedent that, yeah, you're gonna, that the people push the process aside, then they're gonna come back and say, we don't like the road crew ordinances, so, you know, we're gonna get in on that. And then you might set a precedent where you're gonna open everything up.
and that's why eventually, this is somebody early on, when I first got on the board, and Bob can attest to this because he got on the same time back in 1990. We had issues because at that point, I want to say it was at that point or maybe a year or two later, is when enough towns started saying every time we create an ordinance, we gotta go do this, do that, do this. It's like the zoning was. So what happened was when we finally had gotten the state to listen to us, which was probably some 95 or 96, then it was, the authority was taken away as far as an ordinance is concerned, but we still have to go along with zoning. That's how it has to, there's a process to that where the voters are involved with it. Over the years, it's been my experience, when enough people are upset, when I'm saying, when enough people are upset, you'll know it, because they do. And we've gotten petitions over the years on different things where they wanted certain things done. So.
It would be my bet that majority of those ordinances were not voted on by the town people. Probably more than 90 or more percent. I don't know how far back what they did in the 1800s, but.
Well, that's why every so many years, we try to update to go along with what the state dictates. And your workers in the road crew, that was mentioned before, I don't remember who mentioned it. If we had to go to the voters on every ordinance that we have for our employees, can you imagine how long that'd take? Just to change.
But those really aren't ordinances, those are policies.
No, they're ordinances.
There's some that are ordinances.
Well, I mean, Richard says that they weren't voted on, no, but I would almost guarantee that that they were posted for a period of time, so.
44 days.
Yeah, this thing, when it get done and we were gonna present it, will have to be posted.
Absolutely.
After
It
the
has
fact.
to
Yes.
be, not after we vote, no. After we draft it.
Well, he's not saying that.
No, no.
He's
Because
gonna
it's
When
gotta
I'm-
go in the paper.
At
It's
5
gotta go in the
o'clock and
papers
vote on it at 6 o'clock.
No,
That-
that
that's
don't
what-
happen.
That's what I heard.
That's what we heard here.
Yes,
Well-
and that's what I said.
Yeah.
No, that's what I said. And what we would be discussing is whether to add the term, pot shop or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That's the only change
Yeah.
that we're concerned with, because legally, dispensaries are medical things, according to, you have to read the state's ordinance on that too. That's something I forgot to mention. And that ordinance, the state ordinance, I don't know, can you pull that up, Janet?
I've got the definition of a dispensary right here, and that's pretty all-inclusive. It's not just marijuana, it's,
What's the,
Exactly.
if it's the same one that we read at our last meeting, says,
let me read it?
yeah,
It says dispensary means a business organization registered under blah, blah.
is this the state one, or is
This
this?
is the state.
Yeah.
Okay,
Acquires, a registered business that acquires, possesses, cultivates, manufactures, transfers, transports, supplies, sells, or dispenses marijuana, marijuana-infused products, and marijuana-related supplies and educational materials.
but in the very beginning of that, doesn't it say, because this is what we read, it says that that is all-inclusive if you have a thing from the doctor.
I think you're gonna find that's just for medical marijuana.
Well, that's the only thing that's legal right now.
No, it isn't.
What is legal?
Marijuana is legal in the state of Vermont.
Yes,
Yeah.
you,
Not a, but you can't buy it or sell it.
That's right, that's the point.
That's what-
that's what we're-
they're
We're
discussing.
trying to stay ahead of that.
You can grow marijuana, and possess it in limited quantities, very limited
Right.
quantities.
But you can't sell it.
You can't sell it, and you can't at a store, so
Right.
this ordinance is an effort
So-
to.
This is Wikipedia.
Oh, I realize that. But
This is Wikipedia's definition of a dispensary. A dispensary is an office in a school, hospital, industrial plant, or other organization that dispenses medications, medical supplies, and in some cases, even medical and dental treatment. In a traditional dispensary setup, a pharmacist dispenses medication as prescription or order form.
But your
So that-
your ordinance doesn't say as as defined in the dictionary. It says as defined under Title 18.
That's for medical
VSA.
marijuana.
That's,
what
yeah,
that is.
that's the only kind of dispensary that's legal right now.
Well, you can call any pharmacy store a dispensary.
Sure you could.
Yeah,
Of course you can.
yeah. But if you go down,
But you've defined it based upon what the statutes say. And this is what the statute.
that's what we were told, yes. So that's what we want to redo this and then put it out
And
like
that's
we're
fine.
supposed to.
And I have no problem with
And we're-
that.
and that's what we want to do.
But- So you're saying you're gonna give folks a time, a
You're
couple
gonna
of
see it,
weeks,
'cause it'll,
a couple of weeks to
It'll be-
to
it's
look
not-
at it before you vote on it.
but no,
Are you saying that?
no. The ordinance,
No, I'm asking Rick.
okay,
no, once we get this thing straightened out and make sure that it's legal in the way we want it, then
How are you
as a
gonna-
board, we will vote on it again
Okay, so how are you gonna make sure it's legal?
by the wording.
Okay, so,
we've,
well, you've got wording now.
We
but-
don't want to cut out medical marijuana,
So
okay?
but are you gonna have somebody look at it to make sure it's legal? You're gonna have your
We-
attorney?
We've already
lots of
been-
towns-
We've been down that road.
we've already been
Yeah,
checking on that.
right.
Plus, before that time, that's why we're announcing this to the public now,
Right.
right, on TV. And so we have a couple of weeks till that policy meeting, and we're contacting like leagues, Secretary of State's office and stuff like that. And when we have done that in the recent past, they said, well, why are you creating that? It's not legal. And I think you were part of that conversation
But
when
why isn't
when
it,
we got that,
why wasn't it legal?
having dispensaries or selling pot. As was mentioned before, you can grow it in your backyard for you, a certain amount, that's legal. But what's not legal is selling it to him.
Currently, it's
Yeah,
not legal.
right.
Yeah.
And so, what we're trying to do is get a step ahead before the legislature, in its wisdom,
A lot of wisdom.
yeah,
And speaking for myself, I congratulate you on the effort to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good effort. I'd probably stick with what I said earlier about the fact that having public involvement in a process and setting a precedent for that to happen isn't a bad thing, in my opinion.
no, and that's why the process is, because, to go back to part of that conversation, is if we did this now, we say, okay, you know, we feel you have a good point, and as well as you have a good point there, and, you know, we'll hold off, we'll let the public read it for a couple weeks and see what happens. But then, that's a precedent in itself, because then the next time I want to create a policy for the workers in town, or at the transfer station, we're not gonna take something XYZ, then does that mean you're gonna come back in here and say, well, wait a minute, you did it for marijuana, how come you're not gonna do it for the garbage?
Well,
Goes in.
when I was on the select board, I think we had 2 or 3 ordinances that we had, and we always posted them for at least a couple of weeks. And I bet ordinances that you've proposed, you put them out to the public at least for a couple of weeks.
No.
You just wouldn't vote
No,
on them
because
automatically.
it was, then you having history, early history, I might add. How long ago was that? When you were on the select board.
Count that far.
I bet your beard wasn't the color it is. Not to mention,
Things have changed.
yes,
Yeah,
the- and
it's-
the,
I guess it has changed.
and like I said, even probably in our second term, right, Bob, is when we started really having issues. We had people coming in here with cameras and everything, arguing about all this policy. You shouldn't do this, and that's why the state got involved.
That's democracy, Mike.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how democracy's supposed to work. Have some discussion, back and forth.
I,
See, when we do a change to an ordinance, and I did the change when I became constable some 28 years ago, I went around with the sheriff's department and did all these roads, redid all these roads for the speed ordinance and the stop sign ordinance. And that, when you do a change like that, that has to go into a paper and it has to go into all these media things. Have to post it. Now that we have social media, we post it there. We got several places we need to post it. And the same deal, if you came in, hey, I don't want you to lower my speed limit to 35, and so you can bring up 125 names saying, we don't want that
Yeah,
posted.
you're just putting a burden. You're putting a burden on.
That is also democracy.
Well,
Giving you guys a
it's-
chance.
But, I mean, and you said in the past that you want to make this as transparent a process as possible.
and we are,
We are.
we are.
But, well,
That's what the,
if I can't make it to your meeting on the 26th, I'm not gonna know what's in there.
Not that you
how
have a
you,
chance.
how, if you
And
can't,
and then in order to get my 2 cents worth in, I'm gonna have to get 125 signatures.
well, that's democracy. That's 125 people in town that are telling me, we don't like that.
Right.
And then, what that means is, good, fair enough.
That's
The law
an
says that.
election
Let's bring it out to the voters then, in the
Go
next
on to
time.
the next thing.
You know, I gotta be honest with you.
Crazy, I'm telling you.
This is the first time since I've known you that you've given up.
I haven't given up yet.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So, but anyway,
It's just, I just can't understand why you don't wanna take a couple of weeks and let people look at it for a couple of weeks.
Well, technically, you're gonna have more than a couple of weeks.
Because you're putting the burden before you just vote on it.
I do not wanna, I do not, as I said before, I do not, as one member, the other members can speak to this,
No, I know.
but I do not wanna put us back into where every time we create a policy, then we have to do the same process,
No, an ordinance.
ordinance.
No. How
Or
many
policy.
ordinances do you have? How many ordinances does town have? 20?
Who the hell, I don't know.
20?
I saw a book full of them.
Yeah,
There's quite a lot of them.
Yeah, those are policies too.
I think it was over 100, isn't there?
No.
Did
that.
Bobby count them and say there was?
pretty sure the speed ordinance is either number 20 or number 22 or something like that. Number
So we've been in existence for more than 200 years, so that's only one every 2 years.
oh, you haven't given up. Good. All right, let's move on. But I just wanted to announce that before we go any further, that, but we will make sure we post that before our meeting. We'll post around that we're gonna update our ordinances like we did the last time. It's a workshop at 5 o'clock. And if people wanna come to that workshop, and we could even technically put one of the ordinance that would be reevaluated is marijuana ordinance. Is that a meet you halfway kind of thing?
You're doing what you said you were gonna do.
Will there be a draft available like 5 o'clock on the 26th? Take a look at, or is that gonna be something that you're gonna drop as you speak?
Well, I mean, we could, have a, we could even maybe consider after the fair is over and we sure that we have the other two members, maybe we could have a quick workshop, emergency meeting, whatever you want to call it, and do the same thing. It's up to the select board, the members that are here, if you want to.
Well, I definitely want all 5 members here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
But you say you would draft it and then have it available for a week or so and
Yes.
vote on it the 26th?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be better, yeah.
So,
Post it and get it posted, and please post it on the website too.
well, what I want to do is, talk with the other members and see when they're available. Because, Robbie also, doesn't school start? So we'd have
pretty
to,
soon.
School coming
Yeah.
in shortly.
so, and then, I promise, I will work on this for one day next week, and that meeting will be posted, well, and we'll dedicate that meeting, just to,
Drafting.
this draft.
Yeah,
And then we won't have to,
be good.
then we don't have to do it before the meeting, when we have our other workshop.
Yeah.
Is that fair to everybody? Okay, Art?
I guess.
Yeah,
I mean, we've already gone over all this.
yes. But just, you know, some other folks come in and are concerned, so I want to, work with everybody. There's no middle ground. All right.
One quick question.
We have public comments. Go ahead.
How many people does it really take to enact an ordinance?
5.
The select board?
Right.
But I mean like a townsperson. Can one person come in and say, hey, I want an ordinance for this, and
It can be requested, and I would suggest that request would probably have to be put in writing, so then that we can run it past leagues and Secretary of State's office, depending on, I mean, if it's a ordinance that you don't want people driving up your private road, I don't know that we have to, you know, that's.
yeah, we don't have to go any further. I just wondered.
Okay.
Just in general.
That's what my opinion is. Of course, now I'm gonna have to bother the Secretary of State and, Vermont Leagues of Cities and Town to see if I have the correct assumption. And we all know what assumptions are. All right. Is there any other public comments? Yes, Cindy?
I'd like to know what we have to do to change the speed limit from the Travel Walk Around past my house over to Firehouse Lane. Every other road, including the dirt roads, at 35 miles an hour. We got the speed trap.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
And what would you suggest, thanks, Art, what would you suggest?
Make it the same as all the other roads. Make it the same as Firehouse Lane. All the way down to West Side is all 35. It's 35 once you get past Royce's all the way down to here. It's 35 miles an hour on the dirt road, quarter line road. It's 35 miles an hour. But you gotta do 25 miles an hour past my house.
I would,
For 6 weeks, a year, because they have the ball field. I guess that's the reason. I don't know why it was ever changed to
It
25.
came to us as a request from the people down in that area.
right, originally, and that was when you were constable.
Yeah.
So what can we do to change it?
Put in the same request. Part of that, was the kids playing there, but the other part was because it was such a sharp turn, and people, when they were trying to pull out from Coeur d'Alene Road, couldn't see coming both ways. And that was part of the argument. Right, Bob? You were part of it.
Well, I just thought it was strange that you can do 35 miles an hour on Coeur d'Alene Road, but you can't do that past my house.
Try it around that corner someday. Let
They're
us know
doing
how you
35
make
miles an hour
out.
down Coeur d'Alene Road. That's not easy either.
And,
A little bit tight for
at that
35.
time, when that discussion was going on, it was the old bridge too.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. And, when the old mill was there, people, you know how you can see around where your house is and across the bridge. Well, the old mill blocked all that off. So a couple people, the bridge was a lot narrower then. And a couple people got into some issues there, so that's part of the conversation. Any other public comments?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Speaking of ordinances, I understand that you were considering an ordinance that would regulate, say, junk cars or things like that.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what the status of that is.
That's what we decided to do. Was there were so many considerations once we reviewed in our first ordinance workshop that we decided that we would talk to each department of the town and have them review their ordinances individually and then bring up some suggestions to update ordinances that, some of them were back as far as 94, I think. And they're definitely, you know, but one of them was the ordinance with junk cars and things like this was, up till now, was whatever the state had. And the state said that if you had junk cars, but they were hidden, then it's legal. But if they're out in public view, then, what is it? There was something to do with, if it was,
Certain number.
right, one or two, but then also, but it had to be, if they were registered, like if I didn't use my pickup truck all winter, I mean all summer rather, I just use it for plowing. But as long as it's registered, then it can be in view. But if it wasn't registered, it had to be behind the barn, kind of thing. That's what the state law, yes, Marge?
Check with the state, because I think they came out and said you could have as many junk cars as you want now.
But as long as it's not viewed from the
Yes,
road.
they did. They really did.
Yeah, but the caveat was, as long as it's, because we just went through this, on Walker Mountain Road,
Just recently?
yes. And,
Because they just recently passed it. I heard it on the news.
and it can't be in view from a traveled road. That's where we came down on it.
My concern, which I brought up a couple of months ago, you know, wasn't limited to cars, but just, you know, tires, junk, you know, that's unsightly and in public view.
Unfortunately, where we've had issues over the years was, say, a farm, and they had old tractors and old machinery and all this stuff. Are we gonna then go after them too? And this is why the state didn't want to touch it. This is why the state, you know, and then when they come up, the state reviewed it a little bit. I think if you look up the ordinance, you'll find that it says, in view of a traveled road or something. I don't remember the exact language, but we looked at that because, as I said, we had an issue where the old store used to be up in Chippenhook, Barassa's store. There was a group of young lads up there that have fun with all the junk they have, and now they try to hide it in the woods.
So the status of the ordinance that you were working on is that it's on hold or not being considered further, or?
No, we're what we tried to do with things that came out to us. We're trying to look at that first and see what the state has and everything else. But then here again, when different departments of the town had other concerns, we decided instead of sitting like we're doing right now for hours and hours and talking about things, we wanted to get up a list from each department of the town with concerns so that we could dive into those first, and then we would revisit other things. Anybody else want to talk to that?
Seems like there was a number, I wanted to say 6 that you could have at the most, but it might not be 6, it might be 4, I don't know. that you could have without getting into any trouble. Without having to say, call it a salvage yard or something. I believe that's what the state had. I just don't recall what the number is exactly.
And we thought for a while that it was, if it was a junk car from, and you didn't, and it wasn't registered, then we could send the sheriffs in and send, or the zoning administrator and tell them, you know, that's, get it out of here. But what we come to find out was, when we started reviewing, the town reflects back to the, what the state has. And now the state has, said you can have whatever you want as long as you can't see it. So, essentially, that's what it says. It's a little bit more technical than that, but.
I don't know if that'll help you or not, it's in our packet tonight.
All right, thank you, Bob. I was told that state law 24 VSA 2241/2283 prohibits more than 3 unregistered vehicles on any lot. It also requires that vehicles be on the lot for at least 90 days. It normally would take 1 week, or 30 days rather, for an inspection by a state. A half dozen cars on a lot would not be an immediate priority. Given the town would need to document that specific vehicles had been on the lot for at least 90 days, it would not count if vehicles were being moved in and out regularly. It may not be a practical option for Clarendon. And this was given to us from Richard Griffith, who was the health officer in town. Thanks, Bob. Anything else? Public comments? Okay, under highway, the road commissioner isn't here, but the Kingsley covered bridge. But, could you give us something on that?
What I can tell you is that Cash has been down to the Kingsley Covered Bridge, has looked at that with, I think, some state folks to see what needs to be done, if anything. And I don't know the results of that, but I do know that he has met down at the bridge, and there's that, whatever work is happening is in process.
Okay, there's 2 of us that did go on site visits, Bob and myself, at different times, of course, and we saw where there was, one of the support beams was in some trouble, or part of it is. So I don't know, Bob, you want to talk to it?
Well, just Cash and I looked, there is some problems in the southwest corner of it mainly. There's a little bit inside overhead where a number of years ago a log truck went through and done some damage, and it was repaired, which is getting to the point where it probably should be repaired again. But the main thing is underneath on that southwest corner where it's beginning to rot, and by another year it will begin to sag. That's why I know Cash is getting estimates, and he's working with state people. I did not go down with him last time he was down there with the state people, so I don't know what did transpire there. But and that, I believe, was, maybe you know, Joel, a week ago he was down there with them, roughly. Yeah. But beyond that, I really have no information on it.
But we do know that the bridge can become a report to the people, so that people don't get very worried about that the bridge is safe and passable. Like, if it were not, then the bridge would be closed, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And the state certified that.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's important to note.
Thank you for that. Joel, where are you guys working now? Up on East Tim? East Tim's the road, okay. And, any other questions as far as road work? We have one of the road crew here, so.
Joel, do you know if they delivered any of that wood yet that was gone last meeting?
No.
No. Okay. And one other thing, if Cash gets Kent Chance or one of you guys the bridge up by the post office in the village on Molten Ave. The grass is growing out there where that is getting a little bit narrow and people seem to be a little bit nervous about meeting in there.
Been waiting for the roadside more to get
Well, that's something I think is gonna have to be done with the weed eater or something like that. I don't think you can do it with a big mower, but
Okay.
take a look at it and see, I'd appreciate it.
All right, Danny, I think you wanted to talk to us about,
Yeah, I just, have brought up this issue a couple times with a couple individual selectmen in town. One, Bob Bigsby, about as late as maybe two and a half years ago. As of 6 months, and at different times through that, maybe 3, 4 more times. I think last Saturday I sort of screamed at him, or Saturday before, when I got a hold of him, but,
did you scream about?
yeah.
No, he didn't really scream.
But,
Talk a little.
No, we needed the phone to communicate even though we're.
Oh, okay.
but anyways, and then Cash Ruane, or Selectman Ruane, about 8 months ago, and then a couple more times beyond that, and I think he's brought Cash Ruane. It's basically the driveway out to my horse barn property that we put in back when Darrell, we got a permit for that back when Darrell was in, as road commissioner. But since the transference of the farmhouse to another party, they went ahead and planted some cedar trees going north and south along the middle road. Selectman Ruane and I measured one morning, I would say 4 months ago, to see how far back they were from the center of the road, and the trunk of the cedar tree is the center of it, which now used to be like this, now is like this, is on the right of way, the right dead. What was it, 24 feet?
Yeah.
And who says the line are where they should be, really?
Yeah.
But anyways, so now they broadened. That was cedar trees were one blind spot from the four corners. And it's not that people are going fast from the four corners, it's you have no line of sight. And I've asked Selectman Bigsby to drive his car and try to back out. And I don't know if he's done it or not. I know Cash Ruane has problems getting his tractor with wagons out from the field that's in back there by the cemetery. He mentioned it this last time. But I believe Selectman Ruane brought it up to the select board, and the select board felt it was a dispute between neighbors, so to speak, is what I heard through the grapevine. So that's where it sort of stopped. And Selectman Ruane said his hands were tied as far as that, at that point. So I'm here today saying, it really isn't a neighborly dispute. I've gone to the neighbors 3 years ago. I went to them last year. I went to them 2 years ago.
Is it just one tree?
Oh no, it's a whole line.
Oh, the whole,
It isn't just the trees. Now it's the lilies. You can't even see, period, with those. The lilies are probably as tall as that cabinet right there. And they're right on the edge of the road. So, it's a total blind spot. It's become a safety issue, and I started mentioning it to Selectman Bigsby, like I said, 2.5 years ago, when we noticed that you really couldn't even bring a farm implement out there. The bucket is actually, by the time you can see any visibility past the cedar trees, your farm apparatus is in the road. As of the other day, you can't even see when you're going out with an ATV or a car going out forward.
you go up there with the sheriff?
Well, what I would suggest is, let's get a measurement.
We took a measurement. I took a measurement with the road commissioner.
That's been done.
With Cash?
With the road
Okay.
commissioner.
And then that would, to me, would be, first thing would be to draft a letter to the property owner, advise him of what's going on, and advise him we have a complaint about it, and the measurement is within town right away, and that it needs to be addressed.
Well, where the problem is, Rick, like Dan said, the base of the trees, they're right at the edge of the right of way. The reason after it's the branches
Right.
on one side of the tree that is the problem. Now, I did back into that driveway a few days ago, and I'll admit, I was in a car, which is lower, but it's impossible to see to the south right now.
Because of
That
the,
would
because
be
of the
the-
trees or the,
Because of the trees and the lilies. When the lilies are gone, you can ease out, you're gonna get right out into the highway a little bit, into the travel lane a little bit, but you can't see. But with the lilies there, it's a hard situation. But also, like Dan says, if he's on his tractor and he's got a bucket out there on the front of that tractor, where he can get out, where he can see, then it's a problem. But I don't know,
Trim up high enough
can
to
the
get
town
a view.
request them,
Well,
them be trees be trimmed? I don't know.
It's become such an issue because it's safety. You know, I'm not the only one. You know, my son's done it with our larger bucket loader. Had to lock it up, and when I approached the owners, I said, I've watched you even almost get hit coming out of it. Oh yeah, but we creep out. And that was his comeback. You know, and,
well, if it's in the town right away, then my opinion is that the town has the right to go up there and, all right, we're gonna cut these bushes back because there's a, you know, it's in our right of way. But I would do that if you could get a hold of the sheriff and go up there, and the zoning administrator, although it's a highway thing, it's gotta be the sheriff.
I can't really grab a law that they're breaking, short of a town, I don't wanna call it an ordinance, but short of a town right of way issue. That's more civil. But trim it up high enough so you can see, and keep it trimmed that high.
But you know, Mike.
We do the same with limbs of other trees down through the roads that are hanging out, and
I think what might be a good start, is Rick just mentioned, a letter from the town to the owners. Now, what's the name of the people who own that now, Dan?
Van Wyck.
Van Wyck?
Yeah, Tara Van Wyck. I'm not sure what Mike's one of the school teachers down here at the school.
Mr. G, what is it?
If you said, Gamel? Is it Gamel?
Gamache. Yeah.
But like I said, I've talked to him 3 years in succession, maybe 3 or 4 times, and I get nowhere. They want their privacy. When they were building the fence, the picket fence there, they were gonna put another section out on the road, right to the edge of it, is how much privacy they wanted. And I mentioned it to Skip Pratical about he might be taking it down if he does put it up.
Well, if it's,
Maybe.
I think the only legal
Keep an
thing
eye on
is
that.
if it's in the town right away, then the town has,
Sure.
you know, so what would have to happen is, worst case scenario, we have to hire a guy to go up there and, with a survey equipment and find the true
Right.
center line. That'd be the first thing. We had this issue up on, Higher Road. The Higher Road? Where, what's her name used to live?
Yeah.
the tree.
Yeah,
were
it's
on-
not the trunks, it's the branches. That they're getting more and more mature, and they don't trim them back at all. They just let them go. And like I said, it wasn't too bad the first year. Mentioned it to them, and they said, well, maybe we'll trim them. It was the maybe never happened. But each year they get a bit larger and larger, bigger diameter, and the branches keep on reaching out further and further.
Well, I think the only legal thing the town can do though is, here again,
Yeah.
if it's in our right of way or obstructing, and ingress, egress, whatever you wanna call it.
Line of sight is basically what it's obstructing. Is you need a line, the right of way was, I believe, was established because you want a line of sight.
Let's get a letter, we'll run it past leagues, make sure that we're legal, and then, we'll sign it once we approve the letter in a meeting, and then send it. And return request,
Request to send it registered,
or,
Receipt.
yeah,
certified.
so let's get something written up and, you know, we'll see what our legal responsibility is before we send it, obviously. Because the landowner's gonna come back and say, you can't tell me I have to trim my trees.
Right. Well, it's not only the trees, now it's become, the last 2
Yeah, the
years, it's
lilies.
become the lilies.
Sounds like the lilies are right in the right of way then.
Oh, yeah, they're right to the edge of it.
Yeah,
So they're in the right of way.
send Joe up there with the trimmer, yeah. But wear a helmet and, because when the boys start shooting.
Take care of it.
All right,
Just curious, if I could, you mentioned the survey on the road. Dan, when you sold that property, you had that surveyed, didn't you? So you should know just about where the east line of that road is.
Yeah, there should be a pin for the property. That was my next question. Is there are your pins at the edge of the right of way?
supposed to, supposed to be,
For property? Okay.
yeah. And, well, you have a property map, right? So it's gotta be on your property map.
Yeah.
Your family owned that house, right? So-
Yeah.
So there should be.
Yeah, we had it surveyed prior to selling.
Yeah, so you should have it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where the pin is right next to the end of the fence there. But it's probably, might be hard to find without a metal detector, but it should be underneath there.
Just like we had that issue up on West Emmons Road, and where Gravel Pit Road meets. And we had to go and find the pins and stuff. And then the person who was, as it turns out, they were beyond where the pins were.
Right.
So we had, that issue was resolved by way of, saved us a lot of money with,
Yeah, I know the pin's within the, it used to be, shown above grade, but I believe over the years, it's just tapped down or whatnot there.
All right, well, get that information down to us too.
Okay.
And then we'll, get something written up and send it out.
Sounds like a plan.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Now the next thing. State 911 request to rename Coburn Court Streets.
Yes. In your packets, there's a little map of Coburn Court, which is the, it's the trailer park. And as you can see on that map, the Department of Housing never named the streets. So it's like 3, 3A, 3B.
3A, 3B.
Yeah. The problem from state 911's perspective is in the event of an emergency, 3, 3A, 3B are awfully similar, may cause confusion and therefore delay in response. So what state 911 has asked, and Department of Housing is fine with this, that all y'all name the streets. Give them a name, distinct and unique, so that it's going to be easier for emergency responders to find what they need to find.
If we do that, are we gonna get into the same thing that we did up on 7B on north side of the bridge?
Yeah.
With the number of people upset because they're all gonna have to change addresses.
I don't think that's going to be an issue necessarily because the mail coming into Coburn Court is all delivered in a big bank of mailboxes that are on the entrance road. So,
Yeah, but if you have to change it, like say to just, let's just say, for an example, Maple Street and Pine Street, is that gonna have to change on them boxes? Is it gonna have to change on?
no, I think, although I can confirm this with the post office if you want me to, but they deliver to those boxes, okay?
Yeah.
So the mail delivery is separate and apart from 911 addressing.
I suspect, if you look at this, Bob, see each one of those is 106A1, 114-2.
Yeah.
So I bet on their mail boxes, because it is a gang of mailboxes, I bet that's how they,
Yeah,
work
that's
that.
probably how they're marked right now. But if you change them street numbers, or them street names, is it gonna create a problem at some point down the road with the postal service?
well, let's,
I'll look into it.
yep,
I'll go to the post office tomorrow and find out what the deal is with
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
this could be a good whiteboard thingy, because we wanna get onto this right away. I'm gonna put this in my secret file.
Okay.
They're numbered terribly.
Yeah, they are. Planning Commission letter to residents regarding A&R River Corridor protection.
Yeah, this came up because I've gotten a number of calls from people concerned about the letter that was sent by the Planning Commission. Basically, the Planning Commission sent a letter that does actually muddy the waters a bit. You've got copies of it, but
You're using that analogy because we are talking of the river.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
no pun intended, and actually, no, nothing intended, but there's confusion over what the designation means and what the Agency of Natural Resources wants to do, and there's a little bit of fear about, are they gonna try and take my property, or are they gonna try and do something with my property? ANR has said, no, that is absolutely not the case, but, you know, wanted to bring it to your attention because I've received phone calls on it.
And this has to do with that new idea that they have. I think one of the participants from the state was Zapata Courage. Am I
Well,
correct?
I don't know, but it's all about, it's about a river, quote-unquote, river corridor designation.
This has to do, Mr. Chairman, with the issue that we said last meeting that we want absolutely nothing to do with.
Yeah, you had said that
Mike, can
earlier
I-
on
can I
in
explain?
in the plan.
Yes, go ahead,
Okay,
Mike.
what it is the Planning Commission about 2.5, 3 years ago got a list from the state. It's the state's list. And on it, it had 54, I believe, addresses and people who are on the state's list for river corridors. And the Planning Commission felt that these owners should know they're on the state list. That's all it was. That's all it was. That's all it is.
That's all it
Just
is.
to let them know.
Right.
Yeah, they are on this river corridor list from the state.
Now, what we have read in the newspaper, article, and then I followed up asking, like Brian Collmore and a few of those folks that are involved with legislation, is that a group was formed, as you're suggesting, a committee. And they are concerned about the river corridors, especially up towards Brandon and that area, where all these farmlands are and stuff like this, as well as just neighbors. Planting or whatever invasive plants or something along the river too close, so they want to expand that corridor. So that, in my opinion, the guy who farms there won't be able to farm, so, but he's gonna pay taxes on it. That really,
Are you talking about taking class 2 and putting it class 1? Because that went down.
yeah,
If you read the Independent this last week,
yeah,
people went in and complained, and they're not gonna do what they thought they were gonna do there.
That's the floodplain though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was told by the Agency of Natural Resources is that it's an opt-in program. If residents don't want to have anything to do with it, then don't opt in.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Let me read this. Recently, the enclosed list of Clarendon properties, which was prepared by the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, A&R, was sent to Clarendon Planning Commission. The agency has determined that at least a portion, if not all, of the properties on this list are within something called a river corridor. We commission members don't know the significance of having your property included on this list and don't really understand what a river corridor is or why it may be important. However, it seems to us that being on the list will somehow restrict you how you are allowed to utilize your land. We feel it is our duty as fellow Clarendon property owners and neighbors to inform you of the existence of this list so that you will have a chance to investigate and determine how you and your land may be affected. The list does not include the names of property owners, only the property addresses. So if you receive and are not the property owner, please see that it is forwarded to the owner, this letter here. As much as we would like to explain river corridors to you, we can't, as we don't know enough about them. Our suggestion is that you contact the Department of Environmental Conservation Regional Floodplain Manager, John Brooker Campbell. And that's what was sent from the Planning Commission.
That was to all property owners that had property in the river.
Yeah.
So if you didn't get the letter, you don't have property in there.
That's right. Or
Or at least a portion of the people.
right.
Which means that some of the properties that were on that map are not in that corridor. So it says at least a portion. If not all.
All right.
I believe you'll find this is
Doesn't
kind
know if you don't
of one of the pet projects of regional planning. That's all I'll say.
You mean the regional planning that has no weight as to tell you as a town what to do or not?
Exactly.
Okay. Town officers report. Treasurer.
Yes, sir. So I put together for you the municipal and education taxes for fiscal year 2020. You have two sheets in front of you. One is a side-by-side of the breakdown from fiscal 19 to the breakdown for fiscal 20 and the difference between the two. And I'm also proposing that taxes be due and payable Saturday, October 19th, 2019. That's right about the same time as we have in the past 2 years, having it due on a Saturday. So folks who work during the week can have a chance to come in on that Saturday if they need to pay those taxes. I think it's very important to state that these numbers are not something that we just grab out of the air. These numbers are based on what voters have voted on town meeting day. So the education rate for residential homestead education rate has gone up a little over 16 cents. The town tax rate has gone up a little over 7 cents. So for our homestead property tax rate is $2, well, it's 2.0464, which is a 23.5-cent increase. Our non-residential property tax rate, the education tax rate the state has given us is 1.5589, which is almost a 13-cent increase. The municipal rate, of course, is the same, which is a little over a 7-cent increase. So our non-residential property tax rate has gone up 20 cents. If anybody would like to speak with me directly more about what that means for them, since our tax bills will not be coming out until mid-September, I'm more than happy to speak with anyone if you want to call, leave me a message, email, whatever need be, especially since this is a reappraisal year, so we just wrapped up with our reappraisals. So folks who have seen values go down doesn't mean that your taxes are going to go down. So, that is what I have for you folks.
All right, and, I certainly would, you're asking for us to vote on this tonight?
Yes, sir.
And,
It should be noted as well, these figures have been sent out to all 5
Yes.
members of the select board who have had a chance to review this. These are numbers, again, that were voted on at town meeting. This comes from town meeting. This is what was voted on and approved by the voters.
couple things for me is, looks like a school consolidation wasn't the greatest idea. Here again, we should send a letter to the state saying thank you.
The vast majority, clearly, of your taxes goes to the schools, to the school district.
Can we get a hold of, see if we can get a hold of Robbie to, he and Cash could weigh in by phone? The reason I'm asking that is because, you know, we had to vote this in, and I just as soon have the other
Yeah.
two members.
It has to be done, actually it has to be done tonight, I believe, on our time schedule.
So I can tell you, last year, 69% of taxes raised went to school. So like just about 70% of your property taxes go to school.
What was the purpose of this school consolidation?
Higher than that, I guess.
What? You're up on this a lot.
I thought it'd be higher. I thought education would be greater than 70%.
Does consolidation work?
Oh, I don't.
Hi,
You're asking the wrong person.
No, well, you're a numbers guy, I know.
I think generally it does.
Okay.
Generally.
The board has requested that we call you folks and put you on speaker so that you can vote on the property tax rate. So, I know I cannot get a hold of Robert. So, but I can put you on the phone, on speaker.
Is that Cash?
Okay. Okay, Cash, you're on speaker.
All right, Heidi just explained all this to us, but you saw the information and are aware of the information already, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, and, is Robbie anywhere near?
No, he's not near me right now.
Okay. Board members comfortable with at least 4 of us?
Certainly a majority, and,
I'm fine with that.
the one vote is not going to,
Sink the ship, as they say.
make a difference one way or the other. I'm not totally happy with what I'm looking at, but
That was my comment, was the education, which we had no control of
Yeah.
right,
on the local level.
Well, I'd entertain a motion for discussion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Cash, there's been a motion made to accept this, and seconded by Bob. Do you have any more comments?
No, other than, what we don't have control of, the education and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's absolutely right, and the other part of it, we're just doing what the voters told us in March.
Exactly.
Do you have any?
I have none.
All right, then, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, Cash, get back to work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Cash.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
And we did all see this in the email that Heidi sent, so we're up on it. Don't like it, but,
I really didn't want to share the news.
yeah. Do you have anything else for us?
No, sir.
Okay. Janet, do you have anything else for us?
No.
All right, then, do you have any concerns?
It just came to me, coming over the bridge, over here, this way. Not that it's really a big issue, but I've noticed people are avoiding that little pothole about this big. Maybe before it gets too big, and maybe the guy won't pull out.
Yeah, he's been having us all the time. He's
Yeah.
been trying to get that worked out.
Probably only take 2 shovelfuls, maybe, I don't know.
Do it double up and then.
Yeah.
Also, another issue right there is that, tree growth. So when you're coming west to east, you have to actually, and I have a pickup truck, I mean, I can imagine what it must be like in a car, you have to actually almost get onto the railroad tracks to see what's coming north. So I'm gonna ask you to give the state a call, have the railroad guys come down, that's their purview. They've done it every year, or every couple of years, but they only do it when we request them to do it, so let's, pardon?
If I were to have lights up there,
That's, well, we've been,
it's a real bad. It's a bad crossing.
anything else, sir?
I'm good.
I'm good, that was my only concern.
Joel, just one question for you, and you might not know the answer. Has Cass said anything about when they're gonna start paving East Clarendon Road?
Middle of this month, that's all I know.
Okay. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, folks.